This was an election budget yesterday in which a fiendish game of political triangulation targeted older voters with the scrapping of the pension annuity arrangements, business with measures to encourage exports and manufacturing. If you drink scotch and play bingo, it was a good day for you, and a good story if you're interested in coin collecting.
The big picture is that we are working through the plan. That plan is working.
It was a very good Tory budget, essentially. It was a tight hand deftly played to shore up their core vote.
Standard of living is and the feeling of where people are, how wealthy they feel versus how wealthy they felt 5 years ago. There's still a big gap, but if you roll through to the middle of this year, real wage growth is beginning to pick up, and it's starting to look like it will close the jaws on inflation.
The element of the deficit that won't simply be magicked away as growth picks up is bigger than we thought, and the implications for all of that longer term is that austerity is going to be far more protracted than maybe we'd thought.
We still don't have a GDP which is even back to 2008.
Yeah.
We've made less progress in getting back to the pre-2008 crash than any country in the G7.
You do come back to this basic point that there isn't enough money, and what was really striking about the budget yesterday, fiscally, it's an absolute non-event. All of his budgets have been fiscally neutral. They've been very, very small measures, and I think that's actually a testament to George Osborne's skill that he's managed to do so much on very little money.
On the savings element, I think the pension reforms which are being talked about are really quite radical. Whether they're actually going to encourage savings or actually spending, which looks like in the short term they're going to encourage, is going to be an interesting point of debate.
There isn't a plan in place that's going to get us back even to the levels of house building at the moment 20 years ago, let alone that we need to keep pace with the growth of the economy.
If you are contemplating putting in as a business infrastructure that might take 5, 6, 7, 10 years to generate a return, but you're working in a political framework which can, in order to gain a political populist vote or headline in the very short term, knock you back, it is, I think, very clearly deterring some sectors from being willing to put investment in on the ground.
We've got to bring our whole education and employment systems closer together so that what is taught in the classroom is relevant in the workplace, and so that employers get engaged in designing the courses that they need.
What we're not good at as a country is continuing to keep the skills progressing in the existing workforce. I think this budget was positive, particularly for small businesses. This is going to be meaningfully helpful, particularly against a backdrop where lending to SMEs has been squeezed for the last few years.
What do you think is going to be the single defining economic issue for the general election next year?
I think Labour would like it to be do you feel better off than you were 5 years ago? I think the Conservatives would like it to be who do you trust to carry on managing the economy and bringing down the deficit.
Andrew?
Well, he's answered the question. Yes. Do you feel better off?
Yes. Anne?
And I'm afraid to say I totally agree with that.
Some agreement at that end of the table?
Well, I think very strongly that there isn't a dichotomy, actually. It will be who do you trust to run the economy and make you better off in the future, and there's a very clear answer to that.
Well, look, I'd like to thank the panellists. I think it's been a fascinating discussion this morning. I think we've started to see the sort of battleground for next year's general election staked out. Please, a round of applause for our speakers this morning.